All right. Well, we will start now. Thank you all so much for being here once again for the My Career Story series. This month for March, we are really excited to host and feature Chris Rodgers. So I'm going to read a little bit of his background and then we will go ahead and get into it. So as Creighton's Director of Community and Government Relations, Chris Rodgers is responsible for managing the advocacy efforts of the university at the federal, state, and local levels. He also works with various departments and teams to fulfill the Jesuit mission of social justice on behalf of the university. Rodgers also serves as a member of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. He was sworn into office on January 4th, 2005, and re-elected to a fifth term in November of 2020. Rodgers' focus is on improving the local public health system, the social detriments of health, strengthening adult corrections programs, reforming the juvenile justice system, and wisely spending taxpayers' dollars. Very busy man. He is vice chairman of the Board of Commissioners, chair of its Child and Youth Services Committee, and he additionally serves as the president of the Douglas County Board of Health. Everyone, I give you Chris Rodgers.
Good, still afternoon. Morning. I'm hoping everybody can hear me good, and those people on can verify that. Okay. Again, good morning. I want to thank everybody for the opportunity for me to share my story. I want to thank you all that are on Zoom for coming, and also those in the room. I want to begin on what I think probably has been the most pivotal point in my career and in my life. And over these last 53 years, the more I'm asked to kind of present and talk about myself and other things, I always kind of hone it back down to this point. Actually, the point was in 1980. I was a fifth grader at Dunbar Elementary in East St. Louis, Illinois. First time I tried out for a competitive sport, and that sport was, of course, some people think basketball. Group of friends of mine and I decided that we were going to go out and try out for the basketball team. We went out, it was a series for a week where they had all the newcomers come, and then from there they started whittling it down and having people solidify with the team. First week ended. At that time, I was in fifth grade and I was about 5'11". And at that point, I was obviously one of the tallest people out there. My name was there. I got chose to be on the team in fifth grade, and none of my friends that tried out did. So at that point, it was a pivot point for me, and I was deciding over the weekend, should I go on the team, or should I not? Monday to come for the practice, I decided not to go try out for the team, for the simple fact that my friends were not on the team with me. Next year, same process. A year later, I'm in sixth grade. At this point, I'm probably about 6 feet. We go off of the process again. I make the team, my friends do not. But this time, I decided to stay on the team. This time, I decided to go. This time, I decided to take myself through the process. This time, I make the team, I grow, and quite frankly, that takes me on a trajectory point to even get here to Omaha on the basketball scholarship grade. To me, that sets the stage, because at that point in the fifth grade, all of us get to the point where we have that kind of pit in our stomach, and we have to decide, are we going to stand on this side of the line, or are we going to go on this side of the line? In fifth grade, I didn't make the choice. In sixth grade, I made the choice. And kind of then I learned out at most of the critical points in my life, there was that pit in the moment stomach, and I had to decide which line I was going to go on. The most dominant times I can remember that, the morning I was getting ready to leave East St. Louis to come to Creighton University. We got ready to go in the car. I had this pit in my stomach, and I was wondering, should I be doing this? Should I be leaving to go 6 hours away to go to school? Why couldn't I just stay here? I had made that decision. I know what I wanted to do, but at the moment of truth, I had to make the call to go on the other side of the line. When you graduate and you have to go out into the real world, and you have to kind of figure out you know, what you're gonna do. You have to start sinking or swimming. Another pit in my stomach. And at the time when I got married, pit in my stomach. Time when I had my first kid, pit in my stomach. I say that all of those have kind of been my deciding factors when it comes to careers. When I left Creighton University, I had an undergrad in journalism, and it was actually broadcast journalism. I still maintain the accent at the time, and most people pick it up. But for broadcast journalism at that time, you had to have, if anybody remembers this guy, and some people may be too young, a guy named Bernard Shaw. He was a CNN commentator. His voice was considered the prototype voice for TV. Plain, no dialect, you couldn't tell where he was from. But my voice had a dialect that had a Southern twang to it, but also a kind of East St. Louis tone. And so I had to work through that. I ended up not going into broadcast journalism, but spending probably about a year as a sports journalist at the World Herald. I spent that time there, learned how to write, really learned how to put some of those journalism skills that I had in college at hand, but that job was only temporary. And I ended up at the time being downsized out of that job. It was was called a postgraduate internship. Supposed to be 3 months. It then went to 9 months, and I ended up spending a year there. After that point, in looking for some jobs, I had a lot of odd jobs and ended up taking a job as a public relations assistant at a place called Culver Associates. I had about a year and a half run there, picked up trades, writing, made some connections, but also at the same time, they had a downsizing because of some financial issues. And I found myself there at another pivot point. A client that I worked for there had a job opening at the OSBN. And the OSBN was an incubator that was on 24th and Lake. It used to be the Omaha Business Technology Center. The organization that ran it was Omaha Small Business Network. One of their projects was that incubator, and I worked there for probably about 3 years, helping small businesses running an entrepreneurial program. At that point, I got my real hard indoctrination into North Omaha history because of being on 24th Street every day for 3 years. And was able to tie together some things in regards to the economic environment in North Omaha and tied it together with what I may have formally learned through books at Creighton University. I had the real world and then the practical application. After being there at the Omaha Small Business Network, I took a leap. I took a leap of wanting to try to advance myself to some. I had an undergrad for Creighton in journalism, but then as I sat around the table with people around me, all these people had advanced degrees. At an early age, I thought I'd get to having my bachelor's degree at Creighton, and that would be enough for me. That would be enough to take me where it is. But everybody I was looking around, it was not enough. So I took the leap. I had an undergrad in journalism. I didn't have any business classes. So I wanted to go back and get my MBA. So I had to go back from the bottom of the foundation in business school and work my way up. That meant about 3 years of taking undergrad business classes, an entire summer of classes at one time, where I can remember operating on about 4 hours of sleep on there, trying to make up business classes, and then getting to the point where I got my MBA at Creighton. Now that was a little sacrifice on my end because I got through undergrad debt free on a basketball scholarship at Creighton. This, I was making a decision to take some risks, take some loans that I could take a little bit, but man, I know if I wanted to do it. Took the jump off that bridge, took the loans, got my MBA, was at this company, and then decided that I was going to take the jump into politics. So this jump was working for a governor, a guy that was running for governor. And that experience was one very, very interesting. The experience got me connected to a lot of people. I ended up working for an organization that actually had the whole organizing umbrella under it. That was for, at the time, Senator Bob Kerry, re-election of the time Governor Ben Nelson, and a guy named Peter Hope to run their campaigns. I got that, it's there, and then went to work at the United Way of the Midlands. Now, United Way of the Midlands is an organization that has evolved over time, but at the time it really dealt with human services. And of all the things, United Way does a lot of great things to help organizations, social service organizations. But one of the things I learned there is the politics of money and how to give out money and all the things that entail with giving out money. In that time there, I got involved with the local political organization, which is here from the Democratic Party. I got asked to consider being the treasurer. Thought that open as the treasurer, I figured I'd understand how money flowed, which is always key, but understand who some of the key players was and how they work within the system. So I took that opportunity for about a year, built some connections, honed my skills in this area. And then after all that time of working and associated around campaigns, I got the itch there to be an elected campaign. Some people think that running for office is political, and it is, but trying to get appointed to an office is ultra political. The experience I had to some degree, and which takes you a lot more faith and just the Lord's will and blessing. When I went to get appointed for the office, it was me and another gentleman that was up for the appointment. I went around to the people that asked me to be a part of the Democratic Party and volunteer as the finance chair. I went to these people then now, after they had called me in to be a part of the organization, I went back to them to say, can I get your support to be in this role? And they said to me, I'd love to help you, but I can't. I can't do it because we owe a favor to a county commissioner, ironically at the time, whose son was also up for the appointment. Well, now fate had it. He lived on this side of the street. The boundary for the district was on this side. He was out, I was in. And because of that family name in the long run, I don't know if I would have been able to honestly get that position, but that put me in there on the map, put me in the game as a member of the Metropolitan Community College Board of Governors. And that kind of in some sense was the beginning of my political career, which in turn gave me a lot of the other experiences to build on with the writing experience, to build on with the experience of helping small businesses, and now some of the practical real world applications of politics that were more than the Schoolhouse Rock version of I'm Just a Bill. All the inner workings that go behind it to some degree. So that started about a 20-year run of building that up. And in between that time, I was on the Metropolitan Community College Board. I later left the job I had at the United Way to take a job as an assistant to the mayor with Omaha Mayor Mike Fahey, who had just got elected. I simultaneously had an elected experience, but being in the room with a lot of the big things going on at the mayor's office. And then, ironically, when I ran for election and I got appointed to the Metropolitan Community College Board in '99, ran for re-election in 2000. And the day after the election, my predecessor on the county board called me into her office because she had just won re-election. And she said to me, I'm not running in 4 years. Are you interested in running? And I said, yes, I am. So that became a 4-year quest of looking at the county board meeting every day in the mornings. When you're at City Hall, the county board meetings in the morning, city council is in the afternoon. I look at the county board meetings and handle all the mayoral stuff I need to do. Handle the mayoral stuff in the city council by looking at those meetings and going over there. So for 4 years, there was this immense immersion of me being in the room and having to set policy as a member of the Metropolitan Community College Board, me being in the room and seeing how it unfolds in the mayor's office, and then at the same time, trying to see where the wins were with the campaign and getting rid of it. So needless to say that I won. At that time, I had an experience of working as an economic development lender at First National Bank and understanding just how money flowed economically and things of that sort. And eventually got to the point at Creighton where I guess I'll try to wrap it up to some degree, where those years of 20 years being involved in politics, the years of being a sports writer and a journalist, at some degree, those few years of being an economic development lender put me in a position there as the Director of Community and Government Relations at Creighton University. in some sense where all of it works together, where all that experience draws to have to be able to communicate, all that experience draws to have to understand relationships and how they play out. All that relationship comes in regards to understanding where money moves, how it moves. And now building after having the opportunity to be on some other boards, like the one that brought me here today, the Heartland Workforce Solutions Board. And ironically, the tie to that is when I was in the mayor's office, I was responsible for what at the time was Great Omaha Workforce Development, which then became Heartland Workforce Solutions, and actually had to run the organization for about 4 months in the interim before the director came in 2001. So at the heart of everything I'm saying and trying to lay out is that for anybody out there career-wise, which I would advance, is you have to go outside of your comfort zone when you have that feeling in your gut. The greatest quote I ever heard that I still live by today was Jesse Jackson when he was speaking here for a piece, and he said, "Greatness is beyond your comfort zone." And whenever I get to that point of that gut feeling, I have to think that and think, okay, I got to step over the line, or I got to move through that angst of the gut feeling. That's the number one thing. The other thing is, you know, I had to get over the point that I was in that generation that saw my mother and father work 30 years at a job and finish it out. And I had to get comfortable with the fact that I'm not spending 30 years at a job. Anybody watching this now is probably way past that phase and going everywhere. And even post-pandemic, the job market is at another place where it's still unsettled. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that, and that's to anyone now, is just like in athlete, you need repetition. And the repetition so much is not a job and a place. The repetition is the skill set. And you need to take as many opportunities as you can to have the repetition in that skill set. That could be for a volunteer organization. That could be for the job that you are at. That could be taking on tasks that you're not uncomfortable. So a story that I think about all the time is for my fraternity. So Black Greek letter organizations are very intent on being active in their post-undergraduate years. And so the one that I'm with, Omega Psi Phi fraternity, the thing that put me in a position one time is that there was a guy that was the president of the organization. He left. I got told, not chosen or asked, got told that it was my time to be in the presidency. And that was another uncomfortable feeling for me. But I give you that example to say, when I tell you repetition, if you want to be at the helm or be in these positions, nonprofit organizations or smaller organizations are excellent opportunities for you to be at some leadership realms and environments. And that environment that I was in gave me a safe place to kind of be in the leadership realm, have some people around me for support and mentorship to help guide me in decisions and help me learn on my own the rules of running meetings, the ways of making things flow. How do you get groups together? How do you get consensus and other things of that sort? So I would encourage anybody at whatever age you're at, particularly as you're going through, you got a lot of free time on your hands when you're young. You think you got a lot of stuff to do, you don't. Taking an extra hour or two to do that volunteer effort to be able to hone your skills, to get repetition. It's just like when I was playing basketball. You would take 100,000 shots a day to make it muscle memory. So when you got in the game, you didn't think about it and you just acted. And so you need that type of repetition in the real world, in your job skill, so you're able to think out ahead and not be caught up in the moment and get frozen, and be able to think long-term and out and about. So, you know, my career even now has been to the point of understanding, and I recommend this to everybody. You may not have the luxury, but it's worth the investment to go online, get your Gallup score, take that test. Took mine a couple of times, and it has changed every time I've taken it. The core things have been the same, but they move around. And the thing I would encourage anybody is to learn, and this is for your career piece in the job you're in, learn how you operate, how you learn. And I've learned to do that and just try to put myself in a position of, for me, I have to go back to look forward, meaning my Gallup score is a lot of research and a lot of things in that respect. So for instance, it was mentioned that I was the president of the Board of Health. We had the pandemic in March. As that thing wound up and you just understood what the gravity was going to be at, for me to be able to think long term, I just said I had to go back. So going back for me meant reading 4 books. It meant reading The Next Pandemic by Dr. Ali Khan, a book I had on my shelf for 4 years. I didn't take the time to read, so now it's time to read. A book called The Deadliest Enemy by Michael Oster. And basically it was about the intensity and the severity of infectious disease, and really it learned me to respect the severity of the flu. Then there was a book called The Great Influenza, the 1918 pandemic that happened 100 years before that. And then there was a book that just talked about next steps in regards to infectious disease. I needed to do all that so I could have a grip in the room, have control of the situation. And that's really how I operate now, keeping a constant flow of information, whether it's podcasts, whether it's articles, whether it's reports. There's a certain amount of time I have to read just to soak stuff up, and it allows me to think out and ahead, get control of the situation. It allows me to operate. So my suggestion to anybody career-wise is learn to push through your uncomfortable moments. Get plenty of repetition and understand how you learn and push yourself to the limit on that. And I think it gives you some guidance and pay off at the end. So that was my way of trying to concise the career path, give you a little bit of insight, and hopefully open up the questions. So I'm open to anybody if they got a question.
Well, I'll ask a question.
Yeah.
But you talked a lot about looking forward, and as you're as you were on your career path and moving up from one job to the next, education, all those things. I'm kind of curious as to what your perspective is. You're so often in a job interview, will say, "Hey, what's your 5-year plan?"
Yeah.
Is that kind of typical the way that you think of like 5 years out? Are you thinking like 10 years out? Are you thinking of 6 months? Or you kind of have different levels that you're looking at your future and what's coming next?
If I had to do it over again, I probably would.
You know?
But I can't say I can't say sometimes I'm the greatest at writing things down.
Yeah.
The one thing I've been blessed with is my memory is very good. So I don't, now that you can put stuff in a phone, I write it down more than that. But if you want to like putting together a plan and me looking at it, now there's a couple of marks I might have for myself. I mean, there's a couple of places where, there was at one point in time an internal mark that I didn't write down, and I said, okay, I wanted to be in a public office for 5 years. That part I kept. There's some other things I keep in the back of my mind. And a lot of it now is the old Whitney the Young saying that used to be the national president of the Urban League. And I'm not getting it verbatim, but his saying was basically, you got to be ready for the opportunity when it comes. When the opportunity comes, you can't start prepping. So there are a couple of things that I try to keep just principle-wise, not a specific place. That is to try to stay up on the general atmosphere and the culture about what's going on. To try to stay up on what those leaders are, or those things are that are in the job market and are dictating the areas of interest around me. That's the constant reading of information. What I am good at is I think I'm good at seeing patterns and reading out. And I have a decent skill level at implementation in detail. It can rise and it can fall. And so I need a lot of people around me to help me in that. I can give some stuff off, some stuff I might drive at that time. So I can say I didn't write, but I did have a constant direction. And the one thing that I did that kept me driving is I hung around with a group of people that was just as driven as me. And so I wasn't the one pulling this train. At some point, they would be, and we would all be following and trying to keep up with this guy. And at some point, it may have been me. So my main deal with writing, there were certain things that I knew I wanted to get into. I kept putting myself in those situations, being around people, showing up, and keeping myself prepared when that opportunity came. And that may not be because I know a lot of people that write their stuff down, and that just never worked for me. I kept the metaphor I use is there was always a carry thing. And so, there's one that dangles in front of me now, and I probably need my youngest kid to graduate high school before I can do it. But that's been my mission. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you're eventually fairly insular.
Yeah.
You diversify perspective to keep bringing in ideas.
Probably three things that come on the top of my head. One, when I was first getting in, I had to learn how to stomach it. And so there was a book called Just Permanent Interest. The book was about the creation of the Congressional Black Caucus and its founders. And their motto was no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interest. And I read that book and that helped me gather, okay, what my philosophy should be in general. So I tried to take things and what it was and not take it personally, let that thing die. So that gave me, so every day is a new day. Every issue is a new issue. That doesn't linger. So that gave me room to open my mind up to accept ideology, people. And just as you got older, you understand the people from the cause you try to separate. The other thing is that it's the closest thing to athletic competition that I've been there. I mean, there's the strategy of a win, of a cause, the planning piece that you're there for. And you're together as a group and you're going toward a goal. So just those analogies. It used to be when I left school, I felt like I needed to clear myself that I was more than being identified as a great basketball player. But once I felt like I had to breed myself enough with an MBA, an MPA, and had proven that I had some outside skill, now all the metaphor I use is basketball. If I need to, or sports, if I need to understand how to run something, I will read a book on the college coach and understand how they ran a program. And that will help me see how, things are ran there to some degree. So that has helped me keep myself organized in respects to trying to how a coach has to always evolve with the players. Like there's coaches who have been around there and involved with NIL, and that keeps me politically happy to seeing that, I look at kids, it's just said that politics follows culture. And so you kind of look back, history, there's a saying that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And there are a lot of things that come back. I mean, when there are issues, like they are big, when the Great Recession happened in 2008, went back and read a book on the New Deal. And when it happened with Franklin Roosevelt, and it is not exactly, but it is the same rhyme, the same deal. And in politics, stuff kind of plays itself out, and it helps you to know the history of a lot of stuff, because you can literally learn from it and know what issues not to do then. So, having the mindset that everything is a clean slate, having the preparation mindset of how to line it up and things of that sort. And I think, the last thing is, and this really solidified with me in the last election in 2020, when LeBron James goes into the playoffs, he cuts himself out of social media. Now, when I first started, it wasn't that dominant. Now it is. And I got a Facebook account. I got all these accounts. As of 2020, I just stopped looking at it because I can't take it, because I can't. There's a point that I got to in 2020 where I would feel it, but I knew I had to get beyond it. But in 2020, I just really stopped caring about what other people thought. And that will free you up to go. And when at least I start looking at all this drama in social media, I'm like, this is hindering my thought process. Because there's just some decisions that when I was learning when I was on the Board of Health during the pandemic, that you just have to make. And nobody's gonna like it all, and you just got to live with it to some degree. But, you know, to me, those are the three things politically that you had to kind of learn to get around and operate. The only thing I've ever done, and I make sure I've done, is that I've never led anybody down a path of thinking, particularly with money. If there's any indication, I'm like clear to saying, I'm not saying you're getting this money. There's a chance, and I try to always lay out to people what their odds are, because the one thing I don't want them to say, you may not agree with me, but you can't say that, you know, at least if you can respect that, I'm going to tell you what it is straight up, then I can live with that. And we'll have a new day to talk once everybody gets over. But those are the things that kind of help me get through. But the other piece too is that every year, you know, it's a 4-year contract. You cannot allow yourself to think that you are in, you know, you sit here by the grace of about 83,000 people. But in any period, that mindset can change, and every 4 years, you got to go into it with a new mindset. And so the moment that I think that the seat's like entitled to me, then that's the moment I have to check myself and go back. So that keeps me alert to the change. And the fact that, you know, there's a few positions you get paid for, but if I wasn't getting paid to do it, I still do it, just because that's what my like is. So there's never been a day where I felt like at work I was working, because this is what, you know, it's like to do. Kind of relaxes me sometimes. So yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You sound very good and very, very, very good at coach. Very good. Two things. Would you say that you have been able to accomplish your accomplishments because you were in the right place, right time, in your connections, and because of who you know? And then the other, second thing here is, what would you recommend to someone who is highly educated, PhD, looking for employment, but has the doors closed here in this area, very unsuccessful in being able to work here?
Me personally, I would say, no matter what level you're at, you got to have a little bit of who you know. You got to be prepared. But, you know, for me, you know, it's probably a lot of faith in respects to that, because, you know, there are a lot of things and doors that I can never have planned to open. They did. It's right places, right time. So, but you can know all the people that you want to, but you got to be able to put the people that recommend you in a good position themselves. So yeah, you know, I knew some people, but I had the qualification. You know, for that person that's there, I can't tell. I don't know what all the situation is with the person. The person needs to, I think, one, if they have a higher spiritual belief, they need to draw on that right now, if that's the case, because the bottom line is, to me, there's always a reason why a door is not being open. And so that person may be going through something where they need to do that to some degree. I think the other thing is they got to find somebody that's going to have a serious conversation with, meaning there's usually, in those situations, a rationale that somebody's not telling. And so, and there's somebody at some point that I've learned can tell you that rationale. And then at some point, if this person is that qualified and they haven't, they're going to find a way to clean that up. And they're going to find somebody to help them. They're going to find somebody with the gravitas and the clout to sign off to give them that chance. And that person will have to know you, because that person will have to be comfortable with taking that risk. And that's about the best I can tell you to some degree, because yeah, it's who you know, but there's some people that, not knowing the background of that person and what may want to be there, I don't know what the background is that may be hindering that. So that's my guess.
We have a good question.
Yes.
It says, how do you manage your mental, physical, spiritual health?
from the moment that I got here, when I left out the story I gave you about leaving out of my driveway to come in the comfortable feeling, my father gave me a Bible. I still got that Bible. I've transitioned through several ones and even to a phone version. He had 3 verses. Proverbs 5, 3-6. Romans 8:28, and then one more Ephesians. And that was always my go-to to some degree, just to kind of look through. But the point of it is, in the pandemic, the point of that, I mean, I had a routine. My routine was more so at 3:45 in the morning. Now I don't have set my alarm. I'm rolling around. Sometimes I work out, sometimes I'm just there. But at that moment, there's a series of affirmations or books that I read through. One of them is usually a spiritual related book with some verse. Some of it is some stuff on discipline. And then just general sayings. That's just a routine every morning to get myself there. And then I bought the Calm app when the pandemic happened. And I learned to appreciate, we built a house and the porch is decent, but I'm like, boy, I wish I'd have known this, I'd have made that porch bigger and more, because I spent a lot of time out there. So really it is, one, it is getting in touch with a higher being. And that keeps my perspective there. It kind of always has me asking the question, okay, what is this being put in front of me for? And I just got to go through that. And then the other piece is trying to round. So as I've gotten older, the surrounding of people that I put myself around has been tighter. And it is just a constant affirmation of reinforcement, not giving yourself false stuff, but the fact that, okay, this is meant to happen. I mean, there was a story that I heard when I saw the story. It is Kevin Garnett interviewing Dwayne Wade. And Dwayne Wade talks about when he was in the All-Star game, when Kobe was probably in his second to last season. They went to the All-Star game and he broke Kobe's nose in the All-Star game. And then he was like, man, in the first game they had back, when they got back from the All-Star game, he was in Miami, was playing LA. And they had just been on the Olympic team together, the Redeem team. Called him and he said, hey, Kobe, man, I didn't mean to break your nose, sorry, And he was like, no, I love him. I love him. And both of them was like, this dude crazy, and basically meant like, no, this is what I'm about. It's just a part of the process. And to some degree, this is like all that stuff I told you about. I didn't write it down, but I had a vision with it. I didn't need to be elected position, but I always wanted to be at the table for that decision-making piece and how you get there. And so, when some of that stuff hit, I was like, no, this is where I was meant to be. And so, all that other stuff with an affirmation, faith element, and just some way to sit down and clear my head, that's got me through. And music, I mean, I've learned to, a certain song will take me to a certain place of my childhood, and I just sit in that place and be there. And then once I walk out of that place, then I'm back into the real world. So that helps me get through that.
I have to say, I got very much like the book of Eli by answering that question. So it's strong, collective, and on mission. But I mentioned in your bio that one of your focuses on Board of Commissioners was the strengthening adult corrections programs and reforming the juvenile justice system. What does that look like for you? What's like a win or a task or anything of that?
Well, if you haven't been paying attention to the news, the county got a building that has been building for a while. So from the adult end, that win is not building a new jail. Because there's been some push to build a new jail, and me personally, I'd be like, So we got 1,000+ people on pretrial. If you don't know what pretrial is you're in a phase where you're not guilty. And you're sitting there, and the main purpose of pretrial is to make sure you show up in your court date. There's some people that were sitting in pretrial with low-level offenses that will probably be out monitored. And there's another thing with pretrial that says a lot of people that are on pretrial to some degree are probably poor, can't afford it. And every day that they miss from work kind of puts their family in a spiral. So I think the accomplishment to that end is us being able to have a pretrial program now reformed to give the judges more confidence to be able to let people out that everybody signed off on. Everybody in the criminal justice system locally signed off on it, and we've been running that through from the judges to everybody. That, in some sense, 1,000 people on pretrial, I put the money into the program, and before I put it in the building, then you have to hire staff, and it's just a bottomless pit. That's the biggest piece on that end, and not building a jail. In the juvenile end, it is, it is building a facility that's 1/3 smaller than what it is now. And it's building a facility that's more conducive to the development of a child, which stats say that a child's not fully developed to the age of 25. So the facility that we do have was built back in the day where it was just like you can find. I mean, it's an adult facility to just kids sitting. So the facility that we got now within all-in-one center is trauma-informed, meaning it's built to not trigger any instances that a kid may have. The new facility is more conducive to that. It is smaller because here in Nebraska, if you are a juvenile, you are in rehabilitative mode, which means you are not meant to sit in the detention, you are meant to get services. And the main point with that, and I've told everybody honestly that that building is part of the policy, meaning people were saying you should have 125 beds, and I'm like, no. We had 125 kids in 15 years. And you build 125 beds, you put 125 kids in it. The whole thing is everybody agrees the money should go in the program. Over the last 10, 12 years, we've been working with the state to turn that to get things on the books like the kid can't sit in detention because of a lack of placement. You got to find a placement. So now that is one piece of it because quite frankly, that's not the end, that's the visible piece, but that will push certain points in the system to get more efficient, to not have kids sitting in there for 60, 90 days. They need to move out there to get the other services out there done. And there's money to do it. We just need to change some of the policies and processes that are pre-pandemic to make them post now, meaning for service providers, you want them to take that risk. You can't pay them when kids come because they can't stay there. I mean, this is the thing you've been hearing from nonprofit providers around a lot. So you got to do some incentive up front to help them be able to take that risk and get there. All that to me is a part of making the system change and getting a lot of kids. I mean, there's kids we got like, the facility we're going in is a 64-bed facility. There's like 78 kids in that. I'm not concerned because I think we get there because a lot of the risk people think it's on the county. I mean, technically the county doesn't have to have a juvenile detention facility. That's a luxury. Because we got kids sitting in there from Lancaster County, from Scottsbluff, because they don't, and we picking up that. And you got a couple of kids that are dually in state HHS and on probation. So only thing I feel like I'm doing is, okay, you need to handle these kids. You need to push up your clock. It's not my job to do that. So all the kids that have a serious offense that may have committed murder, something like that, they'll have their place there. And the point is, when they commit murder, they're just supposed to sit there until they move to a youth facility where they're going to be there a long time, but they're getting other stuff. So you have to push the other adult sides of the pool to not let the kids sit in there for over a year and a half. The kids should be moved. So that's some other processes that should be there. So those to me those are not finished. That's a lot of the stuff that keeps me there every day. And really a lot of the stuff that keeps me from people asking me questions about a higher office that and my kids not graduated from high school yet. And my wife would be a single parent if that was to happen. But yeah, those are the two things I'm saying. And that's the point too, where, you know, the point I told you too, there was a point where I really got to the point where not worrying about what other people think. And that was one. I mean, to me, those situations were like playoff games when I used the sports analogy, because it was like, until you sat in a room where you feel that tension and you feel all that down, it is like a game 7 type deal where you feel all that tension, and you have to know for yourself where your belief is, because when you make that decision, you're gonna need to be able to stand on it and make sure it goes. And you don't make this. And none of these decisions, I think personally, I went into haphazardly. I knew what it was and was willing to take it. And as long as it didn't jeopardize public safety, then the other stuff, those are my two. Thanks.
I was going to ask, when it comes to just kind of what advice would you give to someone who may be looking at taking a job in the Omaha area or starting an education program in the Omaha area? What is unique or fantastic about Omaha when it comes to helping people grow in their careers, either as young professionals or not so young professionals? What's here for people in Omaha?
Omaha's not perfect, but Omaha has opportunity. If you go anywhere in the country, like for instance, when I was coming through, you know, the saying was, boy, I want to go down to Atlanta. I'm going down to Atlanta when things are there, and I'm like, unless you are in Atlanta and you're making a certain amount of money and you're in that crowd, you're going to be in the same kind of environment in Atlanta like you may be here in the Tennessee. I mean, the good thing about Omaha is it is growing. It is the whole metro area is growing, but it is still a town where you are 1 or 2 people away from somebody that can help you. Some places you go to, it is hard to reach that person. Here, if you are young, willing to, you know, to me, you got to pay a little dues. I mean, one thing, politics and sports are the same, and those analogies work for me. When you are in sports, you're a freshman, you sit 2 to a seat, you carry equipment, you do this stuff. When you are a freshman politically, you get the last choice of office, you get the last choice of seat. It is that. And if you, I'm not telling anybody to roll over, because like the example, Michael Jordan was a freshman when he was in North Carolina, and he was starting, and they were number 1. Dean Smith, they got was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And Dean Smith said, no, Michael, you can't take the picture. No, you can't be in the picture because you haven't earned anything. You're just a freshman. And it was 4 people, and he was the 5th one. And so he didn't take the picture, but he had the last shot to win it. There's a little bit of a dues pay you have to earn, but that didn't stop him from doing whatever stuff. And so even in politics, just because you're there, you need to earn your teeth, your cut. And here, if you're willing to, you know, be involved civically. This is a town that loves you to have some investment civically, I think. Do that. Put your time in there. Show them your skill set there. There's a lot of people, even myself, have showed their skill sets in those environments, and people have learned to work with them, trusted them, and say they have the skill set to go to this job. And just take your repetitions. You're 1 or 2 people away. And I do believe there's some barriers. There are probably racial barriers that have evolved. There are now, you know, gender barriers. But at the end of the day, you're gonna move anywhere, you're gonna have that. But this is a place where you are 1 or 2 people away from somebody that probably has a way to help put you in a good position word-wise. And one of the things around here is if you get to the point where you can take a risk, you feel like you want to take a risk, it may not fail, you can find a job around here to survive for a little bit until you get your feet set. And that's all you need is somewhere to pay your bills, to eat until you get your set and some bearings, and you can take some of those risks here. So that's if you're willing to just work to keep your head up, you can do that here. So that is a lot of the benefit where I stayed. I mean, one is that I needed to feel like I could fly without a net. I needed to prove to myself that I didn't go back home. And you know, there were days where I put some strings together for a couple of months job-wise, but I mean, there was one example where I was in between jobs. I worked at a daycare on 20th Spencer. And I was in an apartment that you just pay your rent, no utilities. I worked at a bottle company. No, I drove the van there, dropped the kids off at school. So I had to be there at 5:20. I dropped them off at school. I ate breakfast there with them and they were at tables like this. So that got me my breakfast. I went back and I mopped that kitchen floor and I ate lunch there with them. And then I picked them up at the end of the day from where they were. And in between there, I maintained a gym membership so I can get exercise. And every other little thing I need to do, I did between those points, whether it was looking for a job, going to a job interview, stuff like that. And so this is, it's a place where the cost of living is growing a little bit now from what it was when I was there. I mean, housing is another deal. So it's not the same, but you can string together a way to survive and get there if you work your way there. And that's probably the thing I can say from personal experience for me. Sure.
Well,
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
hope I got everything you need.
very much. Thank you.
Right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining. We will see you next month. I believe Wednesday, April 16th or 19th is the date. It's the third Wednesday of that month in the week, but the 19th. We'll see you next time. Thank you once again.